UK house prices are falling and have been falling for the past few months. The big question now is, will this just be a downturn or a correction, or will it develop into a full crash? So in this video, I'm going to be taking a look at one of the things that I think could be a catalyst that helps convert this downturn into a big crash. And just being completely honest, I am biased and would like to see a crash in the housing market. So you guys may have noticed the same thing if you've been on Rightmove recently. What I'm seeing in the areas that I track is a disproportionate number of what I believe are landlords looking to sell their rental properties. Now, the reason I think these are rental properties being sold is really down to two reasons. One, they are chain free. Pretty much all rental properties should be chain free. And number two, they are in almost a classic rental spec. Now, what do I mean by this? And please don't be offended by this if you live in a house like this at the moment. This is more a dig at the landlords that like to rent out these places in this condition but charge sky-high prices for it. So for example, if we take this property here, what you'll normally find in your classic rental spec is a very dated kitchen, you know, something here that's 15, 20 years old. Maybe they've updated the cooker or the hob to make sure it keeps up with modern regs. Most of the rooms will be a very neutral decoration with very cheap flooring, and usually the bathroom suite is quite dated as well. So that's my experience of a classic rental spec. Now, obviously there'll be some new builds and rentals in much better condition than this. I'm just going by my own experience of the rental market. I see a lot of properties like this. So those two things, being chain free and being presented like that, usually suggests it's a landlord looking to exit the market. And I've seen a large number of these properties appear on Rightmove in the areas that I've been tracking for the past few months. So what does all that mean, and how will this convert into a house price crash? That's what we're going to be taking a look at next. Just very briefly, just to offer a little bit more context before I do, rent prices are going up at the moment. As I'm sure you guys are all aware, the BBC are reporting that year on year, rental prices were up 4.2%. But it feels like a lot more than that. If anyone's in the rental sector, it probably feels like a lot more than 4%. So if rent prices are going up, why would landlords be looking to exit the market? Well, I think it's important to look back at what has happened over the past 15 years first. So let me just turn off my webcam so you guys can see this full graph. If we go back to 2007 and 8 and 9, this was the global financial crisis. And at that point, there was around about 2.5 million privately rented households in the UK. And over the past 15 years, this has skyrocketed up to, at a peak, about 4.5 million, and it has been declining slightly for the past couple of years. Now, you'll notice the decline started in 2016, and I'll come back to that in a moment. And this prediction here is actually about a year out of date, so I think this will be a lot steeper. I think there are a lot more landlords looking to exit the market at the moment. So, with this context that rent prices are going up, but landlords are exiting the market, and I believe that's going to get a lot worse. That's what we're going to be talking about in this video. So the next thing I want to show you is data from December 2022. So very, very recent data. The UK residential market has lost over 100,000 buy-to-let properties in the last year, with the number of rental homes dropping from just under 4.6 million to just under 4.5 million. So over 100,000 properties are no longer being held by landlords. They've gone back onto the market. So this is showing a decline in appetite for private rented properties. Now, why is that? And why are things going to get worse, in my opinion? Well, you'll notice if we go back to this chart, the slowdown actually started in 2016. That was when they introduced the 3% stamp duty surcharge on second homes, which, you know, makes a lot of sense. That's going to slow things down. If someone buys a second home and it's going to cost them, I don't know, £300,000, that is an awful lot of stamp duty they're going to have to pay as a 3% surcharge on that property. And also, over the past couple of years, we've seen something known as Section 24, which is the tenant tax. Now, there's a load of information about it on Google, of course. I've tried to highlight the most important paragraph here, which is what it means is that you'll no longer be able to claim mortgage interest or any other property finance as tax deductible. Instead, rental profit will be taxed with a maximum deduction for finance cost of 20%, the basic tax rate. So it used to be 100% of your mortgage costs could be offset against your tax bill, and that basically that benefit has been removed. So it's a lot less profitable for people to be landlords. So between the stamp duty and that alone, that is why we started to see things slow down from 2016. But what I'm talking about at the moment is only going to get worse because of what has happened recently. Now, I'm sure many of you guys will have already guessed this is largely going to be down to mortgage rates. There are a couple other things as well, which I'm going to come back to later on in this video. Now, I'm sure you've all seen the reports of how high mortgage rates have gotten for your average retail customer, but they're even worse for buy-to-let. And also, the rate you revert to when your buy-to-let mortgage ends, the SVR, the standard variable rate, is a lot higher for a buy-to-let mortgage than it is for your typical residential mortgage. So you can see here, this is what the buy-to-let rates have been like for the past couple of years. And this is what they've done over the past couple of months. They shot up and are still above 6% in many cases. Now, when I first started looking into this, I thought, well, surely this isn't that big of a problem. Surely many of the landlords own their property outright. There won't be that many people who are going to want to sell their property. But if I go through just a couple of these articles, you start to get a clearer picture of what's going on. So let me blow this up a little bit. So on this article, as landlords come to the end of fixed rate mortgages and refinance at higher rates, research consultancy Capital Economics estimates that 365,000 buy-to-lets will become loss-making by the end of 2023. That is a large number of potential properties, not saying all of them, but even if a reasonable percentage of these properties come onto the market, that is going to have a big impact on prices because there will be too much supply for the demand that currently exists. Also, I was fairly shocked about the overall condition of the space. I expected it to be dominated by landlords with, lots of properties and very few of them needing mortgages. But this article here, it says the majority of landlords, 57%, have buy-to-let mortgages, which I found shocking. I thought it would be a much smaller percent. And 35% of those plan to remortgage over the next 12 months. Remember, some of them won't be able to remortgage. They won't be able to refinance because they're going to be assessed on the new criteria. So they may have to resort to the SVR, so they're going to be paying an even higher rate. So the chances are their rental property is not going to be profitable if that happens to them. And I think this paragraph here sums up the vulnerability of the landlords. The vast majority of landlords cannot afford to absorb those costs. Around 95% of them are individuals, and 43% let just one property. So nearly half of the private rental market is a landlord with a single property. So not necessarily a specialist landlord with large amounts of capital. These are individuals who probably don't have a huge amount of money or a huge amount of capacity to adapt to big financial changes within the marketplace. And to put this overall problem into context, the Bank of England, they have calculated that the buy-to-let mortgages have boomed in recent decades with close to 1 trillion currently borrowed by landlords. Now, the UK national debt is somewhere, I think, between 2.5 to 3 trillion. So if you've got 1 trillion in buy-to-let mortgages, that gives you a good idea of how big this problem potentially is for the private rental space. So their monthly costs are going to be going up. They're going to be seeing their profits declining. Some of them are going to be making a loss. And plus, we've got the Renters Reform Bill, which the government are supposed to be voting on later this year, with some big changes, which most of them are very positive. But if you're a landlord, you may not see it that way. For example, they're trying to scrap Section 21 no-fault evictions, which basically is exactly what it says. They're trying to stop landlords from evicting renters without a good reason. Also, creating a register of landlords, introducing an ombudsman to help enforce renters' rights, make it illegal for landlords and agents to refuse to rent properties to people who receive benefits. And I think that's a big one. That's going to upset a number of landlords. And I also think they're trying to make it the same for landlords, that they're going to be make them rent to families and people with pets as well. And finally, give local authorities more power to enforce and protect renters' rights. So if they're seeing their margins, their profits squeezed already, plus possibly the Renters Reform Bill later this year, and then in a couple of years, there are talks that they may make rental properties meet a certain EPC level. Now, if this is true and this does come to pass, it's going to cost landlords a fortune to bring their properties up to this level to make sure their properties are insulated to level C or above. But we'll see how that plays out, because I don't think there's something they can realistically implement on all properties. For example, the place I'm in at the moment is like 200 years old. To make this EPC C or above would cost tens of thousands. As a minimum, it would cost a lot of money to do that. So I'm not sure how realistic that is. So when you combine these things, when you combine the stamp duty surcharge, when you combine Section 24, so the lack of the tax break, so to speak, when you combine the mortgage costs absolutely rocketing through the roof, which is the biggest, by far the biggest catalyst at the moment, and then the potential for the renters reform bill and this energy bill maybe later on in 2025, you can understand why landlords are looking to exit the market. And if we do see a large amount of them exit, well, I say a large amount of them, if you've got 4.5 million at the moment, and they're only saying 365,000 of them are at risk, that's less than 10%. But if only a few percent of these properties suddenly go from being rental properties to being sold on the open market, that could be enough to spread the supply so much that there isn't enough demand, and that will contribute in converting this downturn in house prices into a full-blown crash. So I'd love to hear what you guys think about that. Let me know in the comments. If you found this video helpful, make sure you hit the like button. If you're not following me on Twitter, you can follow me at Darren the Degen. I'm always tweeting all sorts of house price stuff, including a market sentiment poll this morning, which is 88% of people think house prices are going down in 2023. So make sure you follow me there. I'll post a link in the top comment. And if you're wondering what my story is, how did I end up out of the property market at the moment here in a rental, waiting to buy when I think the bottom is in, I'm going to pop up a video in front of me now, and I'll see you guys over there.